Welcome to Aftertaste, your source for honest reviews on LA's dining scene. I'm Vlad, a chef and cook with 15 years of experience. My journey in LA started working for Jose Andres at the SLS Hotel, before taking the helm of Petit Trois with Chef Ludo Lefebvre. Now, I'm a private chef. I love seeking out new dining experiences, especially with my partner Nicole, who loves to eat and cook as much as I do. Ever since we've met, we've loved going out to eat. On our podcast, we're bringing you our perspective on those experiences in the city of food that we love. So get ready to dig in and join us for your next meal. Welcome back, everybody, to Aftertaste LA. I'm Vlad.
And I'm Nicole.
And today we're going to be talking about our meal at Baby Bistro in Chinatown.
Well, cheers to the bistro.
Cheers to the bistro. The Baby Bistro. So let's tell the audience why we decided to go to Baby Bistro.
I had seen several social media videos talking about the ambiance and the uniqueness of this restaurant for the LA scene, and the food looked good and creative, and also the New York Times wrote an article about them as well. So I wanted to go check it out.
Yeah, awesome. We'll link the article in the description. Yeah, Baby Bistro, it opened in April 2024. Chef Miles Tompson, former child actor, used to do a bunch of pop-ups at Combie, R.I.P. We used to love that place. And through those pop-ups, he created a pop-up called Baby Bistro, which was like really small and inspired by the really old bistros in Paris. So the way a bistro even started was coal miners wanted to sell their coal, and they also sold wine, and then they would bring their mom's recipes and cook that and sell it at their stands to kind of make a little extra money. From that, the modern bistro was born.
Right. And they stayed that way for many years until it evolved into kind of a new thing in the 90s. They brought in this concept of bistronomie. So bistronomie is a portmanteau of bistro and gastronomy. Smash those together, you get bistronomie. And the idea is that a regular person, not necessarily, with a regular amount of money, can go into a bistro and have an elevated fine dining experience without the price point and without some of the stuffier trappings.
And, that's why we wanted to go. That's something unique to LA. It doesn't really have any comparison. I can't compare any other restaurant to it.
So Baby Bistro is located in kind of a courtyard building of multiple different little units that are actually restored historical properties, some built as early as 1902. And this particular developer, I read, was very interested in maintaining and preserving as many of the historical original bones and kind of honoring that when they were restoring the property. And you could really see that in there. It felt very rustic and intimate, lots of real wood on the floor, even the banquettes that we were sitting on, as well as the tables and the trims around the windows and around the shelves. It just felt very cozy.
They've done a really good job of maintaining its soul, but adding that nice touch of elegance and modern layer to it. Every building that was in there, it still felt old, but it looked modern. And there's a couple of different shops and cafes and other things in there. Baby Bistro is the only restaurant at night, which is perfect because when we went there, everything else was closed.
It is a small little house, basically, and they don't have a lot of room in there. However, it could feel cramped. It does not. I was actually shocked at how comfortable I felt in my little booth seat, even though we were very close to the next table and we were no less than maybe 5 feet away from the actual kitchen where they were making food. But even with that proximity, I felt like it was private still in a way, and I was very comfortable. So really big kudos to them for achieving that.
Yeah, I think it's super impressive what they were able to do with that space to make it feel that comfortable when everything really is cramped is impressive. You know, you're really feet away from the kitchen, which I think is very classic to a French bistro environment. I think they've painted that picture really, really well. I love the outdoor patio. We didn't sit there, but next time I would love to sit there. It looked really cozy, and you're in the backyard. You know, this was someone's home. I read that in the first 3 weeks that they were open, one of the former residents of that home came in to eat just so he could see what they've done with the place. I think that's pretty awesome.
And that's actually something that I wish we had more of here in Los Angeles, the historic preservation of sites that have been standing for 50, 100, 150 years. Granted, we don't have all that many, definitely not as many as like the East Coast, for example, but I love it when we put emphasis on that, and it gives that opportunity to connect with the community when a building is in its next life.
One other thing I wanted to touch on with Baby Bistro was the volume level and the music level. Everything was very perfect volume. It wasn't too loud. There's a lot of really popular restaurants in town that are, one of their downfalls is they're very, very loud, so you can't have an intimate conversation. This was very intimate and not quiet where it felt uncomfortable, but it never felt loud.
Right. It was just loud enough that you felt like you could speak at a normal volume and no one would be able to like hear you. You know, there are some restaurants where if you speak in a normal volume, like the whole restaurant can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like that, but it also wasn't like you had to yell to be heard by your companions.
I'm certainly guilty of being too loud and heard by multiple people in the restaurant. My voice can carry.
Yeah, you're not that bad. Trust me. I've sat next to a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, the place just felt like you were in someone's house and they were having an intimate dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very not like a restaurant at all in some ways. But then you're sitting behind the kitchen and you're hearing them call out tickets to each other and working on the plates very quietly and very calmly. It was a very calm kitchen.
Yeah, I could barely hear them, and they were like right there.
Yeah. Let's dive into our experience with the beverages and the food. The way that they've set up their wine program, well, firstly, Baby Bistro only serves wine and a couple of non-alcoholic stuff. They don't have liquor. They don't have beer. They're a natural wine bar. Really funky, cool, natural wines that are off the beaten path. The way that they've organized the menu is very cool. Like the person that chooses these wines has a very poetic and comedic approach to how he describes the tasting notes. It's not like your average snooty som. But the way they've set up the menu is there's wine by the glass. You don't know what it is. It's at the whim of your server. You can have red, white, orange, sparkling, and you can also do a pairing with the meal, which is what we did for $50. And that's 4 pours for $50. That's a pretty good deal.
And for those of you who may not have seen our earlier episodes, we always are big proponent of splitting a pairing if you need to or want to. Usually most restaurants are open to that. And, you know, if you're driving, so I was driving home, I didn't want a whole pairing for myself, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. If you want to split a pairing, they usually will do that. They won't split a prix. You know, if it's a tasting menu, usually the whole table has to get that. But with wine, they're a little bit more, there's more wiggle room. And they can even give you 2 glasses. You don't have to share out of 1 glass.
Right.
So you can still do the cheers.
Yeah.
I think not having any by the glass wine as an option, knowing what it is, you have to really make sure your servers are very knowledgeable on the menu and about their wine and how to help a guest select. They do have a som. He's one of the co-owners, but you got to be really dialed in if you're going to have it be that way. And I thought our server was pretty knowledgeable. He answered all of our questions fairly well. Luckily, we're not too picky.
That's true, I guess.
Yeah. If you pour it in front of us, more than likely than not, we'll drink it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers to that. Like I said, we ordered the pairing, but we also ordered some champagne to start, some bubbles, because we were celebrating our 50th subscriber on YouTube.
And first month of episodes.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for the support, for listening,
Thank you.
for subscribing, liking, commenting, all of that stuff that you have to do to grow as a channel. We really appreciate it.
So the food menu is technically a la carte. There are only 6 items on it, 5 savory and 1 sweet. And you are encouraged or suggested to order basically the whole menu when you dine there. But you don't have to. And I actually kind of really like that. You know, if you go one time and you really like a couple things and you just want to go back for those things, you can do that. I love that flexibility. I think it's very pro diner and I appreciate it. Interestingly, it all seemed to be pescatarian, which is not something they seem to do specifically or on purpose. And I thought as we were eating it, it didn't even really hit me until after the meal that was the case. We do love fish and they do have, you know, butter and dairy in these dishes. So maybe that's why it wasn't as noticeable. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I didn't realize it until we were walking out of there. I was like, hey, we didn't have any meat, which is a bit odd for a bistro. Usually bistro is very meat focused. This menu was designed for 2 people to share one of everything. If you're with 4 people, you're gonna want 2 of everything so everyone can feel satiated. At the end of the meal, once everything is all said and done, it's designed for you to feel perfectly full.
And I did feel that way. Though I am a little bit of a smaller person than you are, I thought it was a perfect amount of food for me.
You know, we have a lot of really great bistros in LA that do the classics really, really well. So we weren't all that upset to have this different experience of, you know, order the whole menu, see what we're trying to do. So because we got the pairing and we ordered the whole menu and we wanted to try everything, we're gonna talk about each dish alongside the wine that it was paired with. The very first thing we had was the champagne that we ordered that wasn't part of the pairing. So it came with, our first dish came when we already had the champagne.
Yes.
That first dish does not come with a pairing.
No, normally it would not. But we kind of accidentally made our own. And I actually think it went nicely together.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, so our bubbly, our Pet Nat, which is a champagne-style wine, champagne method wine made outside of the Champagne region of France.
Yeah, it's not champagne if it's not from Champagne. Me.
Well, it's not. We have a name for it, you know? I don't think that's calling them out in any way. I think that's fine.
I think it's pretentious. I think there's great champagnes outside of Champagne.
But people want to know where their wine is from anyway. What's the difference?
I'm just grumpy. Leave me be.
Okay, so this is not part of the pairing, but it was very tasty. To me, it kind of tasted like a grown-up wine version of Martinelli's sparkling cider, which I love. So it was very nice, very crisp. It was a little sweet, but not too sweet.
I thought it was sweeter than what I normally prefer in a champagne, but it did taste really, really good. A little like persimmon and Fuji apple, you know, that kind of sweet. So it was nice.
Yeah. The dish that we had alongside it was the onion bread, which comes with brebis cheese, sprouting cauliflower, and curry vinaigrette. So this dish, when it comes out, it looks like 2 slices of a California toast you might see in other restaurants. However, that's, in my opinion, where the similarities end. It's on 2 thick slabs of a focaccia-style bread. It's not exactly focaccia, but very similar. High hydration dough and just cooked through, so it's very tender, very moist on the tongue. Really, really lovely bread. And a thick pipe of the brebis cheese, which tasted like it had some herbs, a little bit of extra flavor in there. And topped with the sprouting cauliflower that was tossed in the curry vinaigrette. I thought the cheese was really nicely flavored and textured and nice and rich. And that's where the curry vinaigrette came in so nicely to cut that and balance it. And then you had a little bit of the crunch from the cauliflower, which did seem like it was cooked a little bit, but still retained a little bit of that nice little snap to it.
I think it was like lightly steamed and then lightly pickled with that vinaigrette.
Yeah. I loved this dish. I'm a sucker for toast. I'm a real California girl now, I guess, in my life. And it was everything you could ask for from a toast.
I love that all these restaurants are having a lot more bread dishes and making their own house-made breads. It's always good. It's always good. Anytime you see bread on a menu and they're making it there, order it. You're not going to be disappointed. Yeah, the bread itself was laced with these nigella seeds, and they have a really great texture and nuttiness to them. The onion flavor in the bread was very mild and very light. It was just a really, really great bread. I would definitely use this as a sandwich bread. I think it would be really, really good.
I loved how the onion flavor was an undertone. It doesn't hit you over the head, but it's present, and it just serves as this complex base for all of the other flavors that they built on top of it.
I agree. When you see on the menu it says onion bread, you're expecting a lot of onion flavor, and it was very subtle. It was very nice. And this is one of their signature dishes that they have. The difference is every photo of this I've seen is slightly different. Because they're super seasonal and they're changing the menu often, I've seen a lot of different sets. The cheese is going to change, the vegetable that they put on top is going to change, but the bread is always going to be the bread.
Yeah.
And it is a really great first hello.
It is. It's really nice. And what goes better with wine than cheese and bread?
Yeah. I mean, that to me is, when I think about a bistro, that's one of the first thoughts I have is really good bread and really good wine. Everything else comes after that. You have to have that first before you can even think about eating anything else. Yeah, the one thing before we continue with the food, because they're changing it so often, don't get attached to anything you have here. It's not going to stay the same. It's going to change in a few weeks, maybe even a month. You're not going to see the same dishes here all that often. Maybe you'll see that bread. You can come back for that bread. But it's not going to have that cheese and it's not going to have that cauliflower. But this was a really good combo. The cheese was Boursin-like. It was creamy, melty. It was nice. So the next thing to arrive was our very first wine pairing, which was this Grenache Gris, which means gray. And it was a really nice Grenache with a really crazy color from the Gris part. It kind of looks unfiltered, almost neon-like in a way, and it tasted a lot like green apple and pear. And the pairing here I thought was really great. I thought it paired really, really well with the dish it was served with. It complemented it and cut a lot of the sweetness of it. We're going to talk about it in a second.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this wine. It's the kind of funky that I really enjoy. Just a little bit off the beaten path.
So the dish that came after the onion bread was spaghetti squash and passion fruit. That's what it's written on the menu, right?
Yes.
Everything on the menu is 2 words. So you're going to have the first 2 ingredients, but there's a lot more layers with each of these dishes besides those 2 ingredients. So this spaghetti squash had passion fruit vinaigrette, dates, brown butter powder, and goat gouda with a little bit of rosemary. This dish tasted like fall on a plate. It was sweet from the dates and the spaghetti squash, the brown butter powder, which is basically milk powder that's cooked in brown butter until it gets a little bit crisp and you can kind of sprinkle it on stuff. It reminds you, it's like pie crust flavor. If pie crust had a flavor, this is what it would be. And then the goat gouda was sharp and it cut everything really, really well. And you have those little bits of rosemary that I think were just a little bit fried. The rosemary is probably the only part that I don't really need here. I thought it was great on its own without the rosemary. But all in all, this is really perfect for the season. It really tasted like fall. and we're filming this in October.
Yeah, to me, it just felt like Thanksgiving on a plate, or maybe like healthy Thanksgiving. It was so light and felt light to eat. It was Thanksgiving without the heaviness that normally comes with Thanksgiving food.
And the texture of the squash was really nice. Spaghetti squash is so often just used as spaghetti and tossed with red sauce. This was a really fun and interesting preparation. I've never quite had it cold, and I've never had it dressed like a salad. This was a very unique way to have a salad.
I thought it was also nicely balanced. You had the fat kind of from the cheese and from the brown butter, and you had the acid from the passion fruit and a bit, I think, from the squash as well. It was nicely balanced. The only very small nitpick that I would have would be I would like a little bit more crunch to it. You know, the brown butter was going down that path, but wasn't all the way down it. And I would love to see that through to an actual crunchy element, because everything was just a little bit mushy.
Yeah, you got a few crunch from the passion fruit seeds, but the problem with that is if you put more passion fruit seeds, it kind of overpowers, and you don't want that either. So I think a little more texture wouldn't hurt.
So the next wine we had was a skin contact Muscat from southern France. You know, like a lot of skin contacts, a little funky.
Lots of minerality. Very earthy.
Yes.
Tad sweet, but quite nice. It's an orange wine. If you like orange wine, you're going to like this one.
And it was a perfect accompaniment to the dish it was served with, which was the encimo and salted plum, which is a monkfish liver with aged soy, sea grape, salted plum ponzu, and guacamole peach. Liver is a classic bistro dish. Having it be a fish liver, not so classic.
Definitely not.
But I thought it was a really fun play on that being a classic dish, and that's exactly what the bistronomy thing we were talking about before is about. Is using a different ingredient or a different technique to, you know, pay homage to the classic dishes, but also make it their own. And this one, I have so many great things to say about it. I loved the ponzu. It was incredibly punchy, and the sea grapes were lovely. I really, really liked them. Added a little bit of crunch to the dish, and I loved how it was plated also, where the bottom of the actual dish had these kind of black swirls on it that looked a lot like the sea grapes that were on top. So it kind of blended in, and with the ponzu is somewhat opaque. So you can't really tell whether it's food or a design on the bottom, and it just kind of echoed how the dish itself looked. And I just thought that was so cool.
If you haven't had monkfish liver before, it's very similar to foie gras. It's often called foie gras of the sea. It has a similar texture and flavor, but with an undertone of, I would say, tuna.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. If you smashed foie gras and tuna together, that's what it was.
Monkfish itself is actually quite delicious. It's very lobster-like in the texture and underlooked, I would say, as far as a fish option, because it's one of the ugliest damn fish you will ever see in your life. If you see a picture of it, it is real ugly boy. But it's quite tasty. This was definitely the most aggressive dish of the night. The ponzu is extremely punchy. The aged soy on the torchon itself was very aggressive. The guacamole peaches, they're preserved in this syrup, and they're almost olive-like, and they had a really nice balance of sweetness to all the saltiness and acidity of the ponzu. The sea grapes were a great texture. It was no notes. I don't know if I would change anything about it.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. I loved this dish.
So the philosophy of Baby Bistro, the type of cuisine that they serve, Chef Miles says that they're serving Angelino cuisine. This was the first dish that made me understand what he meant. by that. This felt like you were in Little Tokyo or Japantown. It had those flavors. He's pulling from those influences in LA with all the cultural diversity that we have. This dish really hit home with that. It made me understand what he meant.
And one of my other favorite things about this dish, even though there were many, was that the pairing changed my experience of the food and vice versa. The minerality of both the wine and the monkfish liver played off each other nicely and really amped that flavor up in a really, really cool way. When you first take a sip of that wine, that's not really a major part of the experience, but after having some of the monkfish liver, it really is. And I love dishes and pairings like that where your experience evolves over time.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why people enjoy wine with food, and this is one of them. This is why they have things called pairings. If you are listening and you don't have a whole lot of experience with wine or you don't know what you're looking for, do an experiment next time you're at a restaurant. Order some wine, take a sip of it, eat some of your food, and then take another sip of the wine. You're going to start to notice the wine tastes different, the food might taste different. It could be better or it could be worse. A good pairing will elevate both the wine and the food. A bad pairing will just, you know right away, you know when it doesn't work.
And for those of you watching on YouTube, you may have noticed that we have an additional participant today. Sal decided he had a lot of opinions, and so he's sitting up here with me while we record this episode. So next we had a Grenache-Syrah Blend also from southern France. This wine was very smoky. I tasted a lot of leather in it. You had mentioned tobacco. It kind of feels like a nice dark wood library.
Yeah, a little bit of licorice, fennel, that kind of flavor profile, but still you can feel it was a natural wine. It was a little bit funky, but not in the sense that it was a really old aged wine. It just tasted like an old book.
Dark academia.
Yeah. And not in a bad way. This was a really nice, really enjoyed this wine a lot.
So this was served alongside the squid with luxury rice, which it's a blend of their own making, I believe, of 9 different grains of rice, types of grain, pickled bitter melon, and cremini mushroom sofrito. So just to describe how it looks, you have the mushroom sofrito on the bottom, you have the stuffed squid on top, which has the luxury rice inside it, kind of a squid ink risotto kind of thing. And on top was the pickled bitter melon, which is pickled in kind of a kimchi style with gochugaru and all the kimchi stuff, it seemed. So when this dish was brought to our table, we were advised to cut the squid open and mix everything together, which would end up being kind of like a squid ink risotto, not literally, but similar. I did find it a little difficult to cut the squid with the knives we were given, and it felt like kind of a lot of work to mix everything up in a way that you could have equal bites of like squid with the rice. But flavor-wise and how the dish was prepared, I thought the squid was prepared exquisitely. It was not too chewy, but it still had a little bit of chew, just in a way to delight your senses. And the flavor was also very good. I wish I got a little bit more of the sofrito flavor. I actually forgot that was part of the dish initially when I was doing my notes. So just would love to taste that a little bit more. And the pickled bitter melon. I love kimchi. I love kimchi style stuff. I love to make it at home. This was great, and it was something that was really needed on this dish.
It did a good job, again, like the last course, with making me feel a neighborhood in LA. This felt like Koreatown with the pickled bitter melon, very kimchi-like. And then the squid, I've been to night markets here and there, like a nice Thai night market, and you can get a grilled squid on a stick. And the flavor of this squid really reminded me of that. It was really charred, and they age it in house, so it had a little chew, almost like a fruit leather or gummy candy, but it was still tender enough. I think I did a poor job of cutting all of it up. I probably did it a little bit lazily. But it is a little bit of work to kind of prepare it to be eaten.
Yeah.
So I will agree with you there. The sofrito was definitely, I thought, needed to be a little bit more punchy. But traditionally, sofrito is not supposed to be. It's very, like, cooked down thing. And it's more about rich and aroma than it is about adding acidity or salt. So I just think the whole dish needed a little bit more acidity or salt.
I think because this is kind of a deconstructed plate, and I think when you separate the elements like that, I think they do all need to have their own identity.
You have to have one of every element in a bite for it to work. The bitter melon and the rice and the squid and the sofrito together works really, really great. If you don't have a piece of bitter melon with a bite, it's gonna fall flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe presentation-wise, I understand why they did it because it's like a stuffed squid and they want it to look pretty, but how it eats could be improved. This aged squid is another one of their signature dishes in the sense that this aged squid is used as the main component. It changes with the seasons as well. I've seen renditions of this where the squid is served raw instead of cooked. So it's going to change a lot. This might be still being worked on. Maybe they'll get it right in like a week or two. Maybe they're going to get more notes about it. And by the time they figure it out, they're going to have to change it. And that is the most challenging part about having a menu that rotates that fast. As soon as you perfect it, the season's done. The thing isn't good anymore. Let's start with something new.
But that's the point, right? Because you bring
Sure.
those lessons from perfecting that dish into the next season.
Yeah.
So even though you're not working on that dish anymore, you can bring that knowledge, and in the end, it makes everything better.
Well said.
Yeah.
It keeps it interesting. You don't get bored of a dish. I think oftentimes chefs will get bored. You're cooking the same thing every day for new people. After a few months, you get tired of cooking that thing, even if you were so excited about it at first and thought it was the most amazing, delicious thing ever, and you enjoyed preparing it. Yeah, do that 30, 40 times a night for the next 90 days. You're not going to be as excited. I thought the pairing for this dish was really good as well. It really reinforced all the intense flavors. This wine that was going to be paired with this dish needed to be intense, and the strong tobacco and leather flavor notes that we were getting worked really, really well with the char of the squid and the overall complexity of the dish. It all worked really, really well together. I thought it was a great pairing.
Now, one other thing, you have the option to order an add-on bread, which does not come with anything on top. It's just plain bread. And we were recommended to order that and have it come with this course specifically. Now, I'm always a big believer in bread. I'm a big believer in sopping up all the extra sauce that you can. So I was, we were already in for it.
Yeah, there's no way we weren't going to order the bread.
The minute he said that, we're like, yeah, of course. However, I was a tiny bit disappointed that there wasn't more soupiness from this dish to sop up. By the time we were done just with our spoons, it was only a small, very little was still stuck to the dish. Now, that said, I'm never going to be mad to have more of this bread. So even just eating it alone, totally fine with me. It was really, really good and delicious. So it's not like I feel like I got tricked or anything. I just would love to have had a more fulsome experience using that bread to sop stuff up.
I definitely agree that you should order the extra bread for two reasons. One, it's extra bread, duh. And two, the way they serve it is actually room temp. compared to when you first get it in the first course, it's kind of toasted and buttery. This is more just the raw experience. And I did like it with the sofrito, but I do agree that the squid dish itself wasn't saucy enough where this was like called for a good, you know, cleaning of the plate with the bread, which we love to do. Who doesn't love that?
Yes.
It needed to be a little bit saucier for that. The rice was not risotto-like in the sense that it was really, really creamy. It was this nice kind of cooked down mixture, but it wasn't creamy like a risotto. It wasn't very saucy, so the bread didn't really make sense here. I thought it really made a lot more sense in the next dish that we had. The next wine pairing that came to the table was this Gamay from the French Alps region. And at first, you know, I'm drinking it, I'm trying to understand what the flavors are, and I'm trying to decide, and Nicole's like, tastes like banana. After that, all I tasted was banana. It was, I've never had a red wine quite taste like banana, and I couldn't get that out of my brain afterwards. Tastes like banana.
It really did. And I'm sorry that I put that in your brain.
Yeah.
And maybe ruined it for you.
I have no other flavor notes or thoughts because all I tasted was banana. What it was paired with was the last of the savory courses, which was a grilled mackerel. It came with a goat milk smoked oil emulsion. And then there was some greens dressed in some coriander oil and some quince. And they give you this half young satsuma, which is like a little clementine, but it was green on the outside, hence the young, and you can kind of squeeze that on your fish. This was, aside from, I would say, the liver, the most bistro-like dish in that it was just like a really good piece of cooked fish with a piece of citrus that you can drizzle over it, and then a creamy sauce that wasn't unlike a beurre blanc almost. It was like a light and airy, creamy sauce, that goat milk and smoked oil emulsion. Anytime you see the word emulsion on the menu, that basically means they put a crap load of butter in it and they whisked it real fast and emulsified it. It's a fancy word for something that is not so fancy at all. The fish I thought was cooked perfectly. Really crispy skin. It's very apparent that they aged this in-house. Mackerel, I think, you're starting to see it more on menus as kind of a main star. And it's a really lovely fish. It used to be this kind of trash throwaway fish, but it's really oily and delicate and full of flavor. And when it's cooked this well, it really shines. I think it's a fantastic piece of fish.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of mackerel. I think it works really well in a lot of different ways. And I'm just really happy that it's becoming more common, you know, both as a fresh fish and a tinned fish.
It's quite healthy too. It's very high fat content, a lot of omegas, more sustainable.
Good protein.
Absolutely. I really loved the fresh greens on this dish. There was some coriander seeds and oil, and it was just really lightly dressed and seasoned, and it complemented the richness of everything that was going on. The emulsion itself, the smoke was extremely subtle. I thought because the fish is already grilled and you kind of have that smokiness, it just coated that more. It wasn't very intensely flavored at all, but it was perfect for the leftover bread that we had. Just sop it up.
Well, especially with the satsuma juice that we had poured over. And that was my favorite part of this. Both fruits, the satsuma and the quince, I thought they were genius additions. The quince was so quite delicate, sweet, but a little bit sour, just so good. And you rarely see quince, and I saw you wrote it was a short season for quince, so you don't often see it on menus because it is, you know, a little bit ephemeral.
Yeah, we're filming this in October, which is when quince season is, and it's maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So it is nice that, like, we are going to this restaurant and they are saying they're very hyper seasonal and hyper local, and you see that all the time, and it doesn't always come through in the menu. And in this case, I think it really did come through in the menu, especially with the quince. Of course, it's October. Got to have quince on the menu.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But you got to know that, and you have to be committed to using all those ingredients.
Yes.
So, great additions. And young Satsuma, another candidate here for what we're talking about. Citrus season is typically in the wintertime, and it's still a little bit early. You know, November and December is more prominent for a lot of the citrus that we have here. So having a young green Satsuma, lovely addition. So when we first started our meal, and I'm like looking at the menu and thinking, none of this really feels bistro-like. And the more dishes that I had, the more I really understood it is very bistro-like. They've done a really good job of creating modern versions of things you might have at a classic bistro.
And I love that for Los Angeles. I would love us to have more.
Maybe we will.
I'm just putting it out there to potential restaurateurs
Yeah.
and chefs.
Well, now let's talk about it for a second. The formula of this restaurant. You have a lot of restaurants in LA that are closing and not doing so well. This is a lot different of a formula as far as a business goes than a lot of restaurants are doing in LA. They have 6 menu items, so their cost of goods is lower. The price point of the menu is probably where it needs to be for them to make money, but they only have 6 items. Keeps it really tight. It keeps it really focused. There's not a whole lot of waste. There is more attention to the detail of each ingredient because there's only 6 items. You don't have a whole lot of opportunities with a menu with only 6 items to have safe options for the everyday diner. They're taking a lot of risks here, but because the menu is so small, their exposure to loss is a bit smaller, and I think it's obviously working really well for them. They're busy every night. They're filled up and booked up almost every night. Maybe LA does need more restaurants like this. Maybe the answer is this. I just read a review of an older LA restaurant that still keeps trying to stay relevant, and sometimes you can't fight it. They're a sign of the times. A lot of the restaurants that are closing, they're not bad restaurants with untalented people. It's just what diners want, what we're looking for post-pandemic.
In the current economic climate as well.
Absolutely.
Like if you can't shell out $600 a person to go to a 2 or 3 Michelin starred restaurant, this is a great alternative to have that kind of creative chef-driven experience that you would get at one of those restaurants without that price point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying half. It's a quick meal instead of a long, drawn-out 3-hour affair, which is normally what happens at these Michelin tasting restaurants. This is a lot more relaxed, and I think it's what the city wants. It's what the city needs. There's no surprise that they're busy and popular. I understood as soon as we were finished with this meal.
Okay, the cookie. The cookie. I think this is probably the dish that has generated the most conversation, disagreement, the strongest feelings in people who have come to eat here.
It's provocative.
It is provocative. And
which is crazy to say about a cookie.
yes. So the cookie, as it's listed on the menu, says pine nut rhubarb. But what it really is a pine nut cookie that has cucumber cream on top, poached rhubarb, just a little bit, almost flakes, and 2 fennel fronds per cookie.
You get 2 cookies per order.
And 2 cookies per order, yes. I didn't know what to expect. I had read about this cookie, so I guess I did know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect of the actual flavor on my tongue. But what I fully didn't expect was to love this cookie. From the first bite, my mind was blown. I couldn't believe that a cucumber cream, a sweet cucumber cream, could work for me. And it was really good. It was a bit salty, so I think that also helped with like the cucumber savoriness, but also melded into the sweetness of it.
Yeah, first of all, putting cucumber on a cookie is unhinged behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you told me you're going to have a cucumber on a cookie tonight, you're not going to get a whole lot of smiles out of me. I was upset at how much I love the cucumber cream. It's so good. It was like a pudding or like a pastry cream kind of piped on top of this cookie. The cookie itself I thought was a great standard cookie, almost kind of like a peanut butter cookie, but with pine nuts instead of peanut butter. Texturally, I would say that was similar.
I would agree.
The cucumber was so subtle. Almost impossibly subtle. I don't know. Like they think they just put a tiny bit of cucumber juice in this cream, and it worked. I don't know. I don't understand why it worked. I kept eating more of it and thinking, I want to hate this. I want to hate this, and I couldn't hate it.
I just surrendered to it and let it flow through me. That was the only thing you could do.
I didn't know what to make of it. I still don't really know what to make of it, but I kind of want one right now. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm like craving it just so that I can still, it's like reading a book and you didn't quite understand it, or you're watching a movie and they'll have those movies where you got to watch it a few times to really understand, like Inception.
Memento.
Yeah, this cookie was like that. Like you need to have it a few times before you fully really understand what's happening. I think my only note on the cookie is I wanted more rhubarb because the rhubarb was really, really intense and salty and tart and a little bitter, and the cucumber cream in the cookie itself was extremely sweet. Very, very sweet. And we didn't have any coffee. So ended up I just wanted more of the rhubarb. That small thing. Either way, cucumber on the cookie, who knew? Who knew?
I just loved everything about it. The texture of the cookie also is perfectly chewy, but a little bit crispy around the edges where you had the larger pine nuts.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
The fennel fronds, there was like 2 little fennel fronds, and it looked pretty and nice, and it was a really nice garnish. Cucumber and fennel are good friends, but I didn't really taste it or need it. I don't think you should take it away, but it's kind of there. It didn't really move the needle.
So you may have noticed looking at the drinks menu, on the pairing it says 4 pours and a little extra. So the Beekeeper's Mead, which is a digestif, is the little extra, and it is really a little extra. It is a little almost like tiny goblet, heavy silver goblet, but tiny, like 3 inches tall, filled with the mead. And I don't know, maybe like a shot glass worth of mead inside. So it was just presentation wise, I like stuff like this. It felt special and fun. And I thought the mead was really nice. I've had a few meads that were incredibly bracing and alcoholic. And I would say this one was much more balanced. It had more sweetness. It felt really like nice and dark honey-like. And the honey flavor was very nice and strong.
For those that don't know what mead is, it's basically fermented honey that has alcohol in it. This one really tasted like kind of a buckwheat honey almost. It had a real good nuttiness to it. It was very nice, although very sweet after the cookie.
Yeah.
I don't think that this was meant to be a pairing because we didn't get the mead until after the cookie. This is something you have after the meal is over.
Right. Well, it's your digestif.
Right. I think I probably should have just ordered a coffee to go with it as well. It was a lot of sweet for me.
And when we get into service, I was going to bring this up. I did see they had coffee on the menu, and we actually smelled coffee when we got there. So I was kind of expecting it to be offered to us along with the dessert.
That's right, we weren't offered
And I was a little disappointed that it wasn't.
Maybe they were trying to get us out of there.
Maybe. We weren't there that late.
No, it was a quick meal. So that wraps up the eating and drinking experience at Baby Bistro. If you order the whole menu, plus the extra bread, plus the pairing, that is everything that you're gonna have for 2 people. Like other restaurants that offer a tasting menu experience of their a la carte menu, one thing that I'm curious about is why they don't just put it on the menu. We went in thinking we're gonna order the whole menu. Once we started talking to the server about the menu, it's suggested to us to do it that way. This is how they want us to experience Baby Bistro. Anyone that comes in, they're gonna be like, order the whole menu. Why don't they just put that on the menu? I basically had to do the math myself. So I did the math. It's $140 for the entire menu and an additional $50 for the pairing. So $190 all in if you want to share this experience. If you add the extra bread, another $8. So it ends up being $99 a person.
For the full menu to share plus 1 wine pairing.
Yes. So if you want your own wine pairing, obviously it's going to be $50 per person for the wine pairing, but I thought if you're not trying to get drunk and you just want to experience what the pairings are, which I think is important for a place like this, then splitting one is definitely the move. It keeps the cost a little bit lower. I thought the amount of food was the perfect amount of food where you didn't feel hungry afterwards, but you didn't feel gross. Mm-hmm. Really good thing for a date.
Yeah. And the ambiance also perfect for a date.
Absolutely. Very intimate, very date-like. I really liked our little candle.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And we had like an actual candle, not like a light-up thing.
At that point, if you're going to have just a LED little tea light, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Live flame or bust. So the service was very nice. It felt very personal and personable. They were kind of unobtrusive, but I felt like they were always there when you needed them. We really didn't wait too long to have things cleared from our table or to order additional things. Not that we really needed to do that, but we did like to ask them clarification or for some more information. And no matter who was around us or who had brought the food, they were able to answer those questions for us, which is always nice to have.
It was definitely a good service experience. You felt really comfortable in there. You felt taken care of. The server was very knowledgeable about the food, about the wine, and it didn't feel scripted. It didn't feel, like you're getting the same spiel as everybody else. And I think it's easy for them because there's only 6 menu items. They don't have to be like, here are my favorites and here are the hits. And it's like, they don't have to go through all those motions. So it makes it a little bit more streamlined. The pacing of the meal was absolutely perfect. From one dish to the next to the wine, the way that it came to the table was very, very dialed in. The kitchen, they've been doing this for 1.5 years. They seem really, really, really in sync. Because for me, most diners aren't going to catch this or know this, but I'm listening to the kitchen while I'm eating and I'm hearing them call out orders and talking to each other about the flow of service and what they need to have coming up next. And they seemed really, really in sync. There didn't seem like there was any kind of fumbles or stumbles, and it translated to our experience. Everything came out within a time where you're never really quite waiting in between dishes all that much, but you don't feel like you're being rushed out the door either.
You're right. I didn't even really think about it because it was so smooth. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is coming from the fine dining world, I think, that they're bringing into this experience.
Yeah.
That is really, really just makes it such a pleasant meal.
The goal of hospitality is to make you feel comfortable and full of joy and not have to worry or stress about anything related to your dining experience. The more times we've said, I didn't even think about that. That's the goal. The goal is we don't want you to have to think about anything. We just want you to have fun.
Yes. Yeah.
And they did a great job at that.
I definitely had fun.
Okay. So we've talked about the food, we've talked about the wine, we've talked about the service and how we feel. The only thing that is left is the verdict. I was really, really on the fence about this one. I was really back and forth, and we are going to give it 3 taste buds. Baby Bistro, 3 taste buds. And here's why. Everything about this place is so unique and so original. The menu is creative, the flavors are creative, it's seasonal. There's nothing quite like it in LA, and I think if you are a person who is a foodie, who loves trying new things and going out to eat and being adventurous, this is a perfect restaurant for you to go and check out and make it a date night destination or a special occasion place, especially if you want to have a Michelin style experience for a little bit of a smaller price point.
This is a place I would go to have my mind and my palate expanded, to make me think of things that I may never have thought of before. For example, the cucumber on the cookie. Stuff like that is such a draw here. Now, 3 taste buds for us means it's worth a trek. And I think this is. Like, my friends who live on the other side of town, what I'm going to be telling them is it's worth the trek to have this experience. Now, is it the kind of place I'm going to go every night or tell them to go every night? Probably not. But I am interested, were I to go back, to see the menu evolve through the seasons and just through their life as a restaurant.
I think a lot of the restaurants that we have given 3 taste buds already are places that I want to go back to and finish experiencing the restaurant and maybe order some of the things that I liked from the first time around and seeing the progression. For this, you're having the whole thing. You're experiencing the whole restaurant the first time you go. So you can go once a year and then come back and it'll be completely different. But the experience will be the same. The service, the ambiance, the way the dinner was, the way we felt when we left, that I think will all translate and be the same. And that's why it gets 3 taste buds. I don't think any of the dishes that we had are things that I'm like gushing over and I can't wait to try again. It was more about like how cool and how interesting it was. It was
provocative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's worth a trek at least once.
I think another reason for the 3 is the wine was fantastic. It was unique and it was flavorful and funky and a lot of stuff that you probably won't see again as far as the bottles and the distributors. I think they've done a really great job of curating this list to fit the mold of what this restaurant is. Really, really cool space.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's it for our meal at Baby Bistro. Thank you so much for joining us.
And if you've had an experience at Baby Bistro, please let us know in the comments what it was like.
Bye.